Welcome back to another episode of Healthy and Whole.
Mind, body, and soul.
Thank you so much for joining us again. Hopefully you enjoyed our show last month on women's health. We had a dynamic guest in Dr. Leanne Black. So if you missed that one, go back and check that video out after this episode, of course. But thank you so much for joining us. Healthy and Whole in Mind, Body, and Soul is a show that hopes to empower and inform our community and our viewers about ways we can take care of our whole being, whether it be our mind, our body, and definitely our spiritual soul, right?
Yes.
Before we get started, we always want to thank those that support and help us get this broadcast out. Pastor John Heraclio Wyatt Jr. And his lovely wife, Sister Paulette Wyatt, from the pastor and first lady of Apostolic Faith Church in Brooklyn, New York. We thank them for the inspiration to bring this show to bear. Thanks for inviting us to be a part of it. We also want to thank the tech team, which is Brother Johnny Morrison, and the flyer you may see go out is his lovely wife, Sister Pam. So we thank God so much for all that they're doing and that they work with us so closely. But this month, last month was Women's Health Month. This month is Children's Wellness Month. Yes. Specifically, this month does talk about autism and that sort of thing. And we know that our show last year focused a lot on autism and approaches with that. But this month, we want to take a different approach, talk about wellness as a whole for our children. So
now we really want to, now all the kids are into technology. So this show is going to be more technology driven and how children can set a routine, how we can help them move forward and flourish. And we have a dynamic guest waiting for us. Right.
I remember when I was growing up, that's when video games were just becoming a big thing. And my parents and grandparents...
Was yours Atari?
Oh, I'm not that old. Really? Atari? Did y'all hear her? Look how old she's trying to... Now, I can't claim to be young, so it was a Sega Master System.
Okay.
Most people watch it may, but kids today, they don't know what that is. But video games are between that, the first Nintendo that you have to blow the cartridge and do all that sorts of stuff. And my grandparents didn't understand why we spent so much time playing with this game. They really didn't. And from there, we've seen technology grow from something you did as a pastime. Now, for everybody, but especially kids, it's ubiquitous. It's everywhere. It's a part of our daily existence.
And some people even have it as careers.
Yeah. But you know what? Those people that have it as careers, that's why, because they can help us be healthy, and especially our children. Making sure healthy habits and healthy routines are noted in those formative years are very, very important. And that's so we're going to jump right in this month and talk about children's wellness. Sorry. Y'all, excuse me, I'm talking too fast. I'm excited because I've got 4 children that the more tips I get to help them, the better it is for them. So we're going to jump right in. Our guest tonight, you want to introduce her or should I introduce her?
You can do it.
Why do I have to do it?
You got it.
Okay. I'm ecstatic to do it. But our guest tonight is let me get her term right, a school-level instructional technologist, but she is so much more than that. She is an educator at heart. She is great with kids at every level. I've seen her personally work with children in so many different auxiliaries and facets, and always the outcomes are great. She has a heart and a mind for children, and she has attained great educational preparation to do this. So I'm going to bring her on and let her tell us some more about herself, and hopefully give us a lot of tips about how we can establish and support healthy technology routines and habits with our children. I want to introduce our guest. Thank you so much for joining us, Dr. Latoya Glenn. How are you tonight?
I'm doing very well. Thank you all for having me on the show tonight.
Thank you for taking time out of your busy schedule to join us. We know educating youth and preparing to do that and preparing to lead is a very time-consuming thing. So we really, really appreciate you setting aside some of your time to do that for us.
Could you tell us more about you and what led you into technology as a doctorate and final career?
All right. So I guess it's all kind of weird. Like, where do you start? What do you want to know about me? Grew up in small town, Dorchester, South Carolina, country town. Like, now my mom has chickens and rabbits in the backyard. Like, internet was slow. Cable is still very slow, or not cable. Internet is still very slow, and the TV in and out if it's a bad storm. So grew up, technology was there, but it wasn't like a huge deal, like to the point I didn't even grow up with a TV in my room. We had a TV in 2 rooms in our house, and computer. We ended up with one computer, and I don't think I got my first laptop until I was in college. Didn't get my first cell phone until college. So I always loved technology, but I didn't always have access to it. But grew up in Dorchester, undergraduate degree earned from Claflin University. Went back and got my master's a little bit later in elementary administration and supervision. And I recently earned my doctorate degree in reading and literacy. And so none of those degrees are in technology, but I got into technology after teaching for, I think, 4 years. The technology department in my district decided that it was time for us to go one-to-one. And because I was using the computer labs at our school and whatever devices they would bring, they decided to pilot that one-to-one program in my classroom. And so from there, I really got into it. Like, we used the technology for all that we could in any way I could find to help enhance the learning for the children. We used the technology that way. And after 2 years of doing that, I guess I was doing something right, because they offered me the job as, then it was called digital resource coach, but now it's the same job that I'm doing as a school level instructional technologist. And I'm actually in my 8th or 9th year doing this job.
Wow, that's awesome. That is so awesome. And I'm gonna already start off with a question. Now, with your master or with your doctorate being in reading and literacy, is that because of your seeing that married together with technology? Was technology a tool or a vehicle used to improve reading and literacy? And how have you seen those two things play together?
So that's a very interesting question, because if anyone who knows anything about education, whether it's because you're working in the field, because you're a parent, community member, you know that reading is the top priority. And there's been so much debate, and I shouldn't even use past tense, but there is so much debate about technology. Does it help students learn to read, or does it harm them? And honestly, the technology right now is inconclusive. There are several reports, though, that tell us that technology doesn't enhance learning. But I always like to take the stance that it's not good or bad. It kind of coexists, and it's all about how you use it. So specifically when it comes to teaching children how to read, there are some huge advantages to using technology, because students are different, students' needs are different. And with technology, you can use it as a tool to really personalize learning paths and give students what they need. If you have a student who's just learning letter sounds, which is a foundational skill, the basics of knowing how to decode words, then you can put them on an app, or they can have that one-on-one tutor, I'll do an air quotes, with a technology program that will teach them those letter sounds. You may have another child who needs to practice their letter identification. Again, you can use the technology to give that. If it's comprehension, there's so many programs that you can use where students are reading a text and then they go back to answer those questions. And so there's not a clear-cut answer of, yes, technology helps students with reading or it hinders them with reading. Like most things, it really goes back to, did we plan how we're going to use this technology? Are we using it efficiently, effectively? And are we kind of doing those fidelity checks? Are we going back to check students' progress to say, since they've been using this program or this app or this device, how is it helping or hurting their progress?
That is so informative. That's things I didn't think about, especially the ability to personalize and like you said, those personalized learning experiences. I never really thought about that. I always thought, just this is what technology is. I never really thought of that. So I appreciate that answer.
With the COVID that happened the last 2 years, it seemed like we all were thrown into technology, and everybody was like, how do I do this? What do I do? I don't understand. And I know that some of the children were like that. Should children have a time limit on using technology? And is there like restrictions that we can put in place for kids using technology?
So I'll preface this answer by saying I don't have children, but I do have nieces and nephews, a host of young cousins who I often think about. And whenever I'm making decisions, I always think about, okay, what would I want for them, or what do I want for them? I do believe that children need time limits when it comes to devices, for several reasons. One of the pros and cons of technology is the availability of information. Literally, the world is at our fingertips. And what we have access to as adults, as mature adults, as adults who know how to leave a website, close a pop-up if it comes out, children also have access to those same things. And so limits will help so that children don't get wrapped up in just, I'll say, a world before they're ready for that world. Limits also help because technology, even as adults, like if you go into the store, or better yet, let's say we go into a restaurant, or we're at the airport, or someplace where people are in the same space just waiting. Most people are like this. Notice my phone was right here. I didn't have to go for it. Most people are like this. And so another benefit of limiting children on devices is to help them with social skills. This wasn't the question, but I'm going to add it in. One of the effects we're seeing in schools that because of COVID, because students were kind of locked down at home for a year and a half, is social skills. Many students are lacking in that area because most of their day was spent on a device. And even when they were finished with school, it was now game time, but on a device. And even those students who are talking to others through the gaming systems, you know, playing Fortnite or whatever the cool games are now, it's still socializing through the internet is much different from in-person social skills. And we've seen a huge impact on students in class because of it. So limiting time on technology, I think is extremely important.
That is so good. That's you know, because I know us as parents, we always thought there should be limits, and a lot of times it's just so you could have a proper bedtime. It wasn't, we didn't have the deep knowledge and understanding that you just passed on to us. But I want to ask a follow-up question about the social skills. Like, what particular breakdowns or what particular changes have you seen in social skills, and what are you doing in the educational space to help remedy some of that?
Got it. So one of the things with technology, we learn instant gratification. Think about why we like Netflix so much. I don't have to wait next week to watch the next episode. I can literally sit and watch 12 hours of TV back to back. Children, when I want to hear Baby Shark 50 times in a row, I go to YouTube and I click play 50 times in a row. And so instant gratification, which means when I'm in class and it's not my turn yet, I get upset. Another thing with technology, going back, just knowing how to talk with others, how to engage in a full conversation. If I'm always on my device, and even with older kids, if I'm on my device and everything is just a quick text message or everything is an emoji, sometimes I lose the skills of like when you're interacting with people, there's eye contact involved, there's other non-verbal body language, like I'm nodding or my eyebrows go up like wow. But if I don't have those interactions because I'm on the device all of the time, then it creates a struggle with children knowing how to just engage in authentic conversations. So one of the things we do at school to help with that, it's so weird as a technology coach. I often tell teachers, don't just pull out technology because you see me. I may come into your classroom and what you're doing, technology isn't appropriate. Like there are so many times where kids shouldn't be on devices. Like if you're reading a book, they don't have to go on, we use Canvas in my school. They don't have to go on Canvas and write a discussion post. Let them talk to someone who's sitting right next to them. And so really we're just being very intentional about use technology here, but know that it doesn't have to be from 7:40 or 7:10 when kids come in class until 2:30 when they leave.
Wow, that's so good.
I've noticed that with our boys, like Leonard says, sometimes the way I talk just straight. And I noticed that when our kids talk, they talk like they're texting. And they just, it's like chop, 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 chop. And we had to move the devices, because it's like when they're speaking to an adult that's outside, they think that's rude. But in actuality, that's just how they speak. You know?
Right. Yeah, it's just it's become almost another language. I'll say, when kids are speaking, and so just taking that device, and even like some things simple. Like I'm not a believer in homework. I believe when kids get home, like that's your time. Go outside and play. Go ride a bike. Ride your hoverboard. But also engage with the people around you. You know, because that is so much learning that happens there.
And, you know, I was thinking about this, and of course, everyone now has had their comment or on the whole Oscars, Will Smith, Chris Rock fiasco. But one of the things that it brought to light, apparently with Chris Rock, is that he has a learning disorder.
Asperger's?
Maybe Asperger's, but nonverbal, he doesn't respond appropriately to nonverbal communication. Not to say that played into that event, but if you see something like that could impact him. And now with technology, if they are losing, maybe not through a disease process, but through overexposure to technology and losing that ability to communicate in ways, nonverbal communication, or even having a good grasp on the use or the full use of language. If you're just texting, there's so much lost in, in the voice inflection and intonation. They don't understand a lot of that sorts of stuff. So it's really eye-opening to hear you say that those limits are very important, and that real person-to-person interaction is important as well.
It is. And one thing we're seeing in the job force, and I guess more in education, they're always talking about college and career readiness. A few years ago, it was all about, can people use this technology? Can we teach them to use this technology? But something you hear more now, do they have soft skills? Do they know how to communicate well? How do they interact with others? So there's a shift there. And I think and I'm sure research has been done, but I'm sure if we dug into that research, we would see, because technology was such a push before and everything was technology, we lost some of the opportunities to teach those soft skills.
Right.
Wow.
That's my
first time ever hearing that, soft skills.
Wow. I mean, and I think one of the things that you see a lot now is in a lot of professional literature and articles is you see a lot of things now about emotional intelligence. And I think that's one of the reasons, because we've been so bogged down in technology that a lot of people have lost that, and it's not really effective. It's not as effective as it could be in communication. All right, another question.
I was just thinking about when I drop the kids off to school, and there's like somebody doing the line thing. I can remember as a child, whenever you saw someone, you say, "Hi, good morning, how are you doing?" The kids just walk right by. I even have to tell my own children to remember to say good morning.
Yeah, they don't engage their environment very well.
No.
But think about it. If you're typically on your device, like sometimes I look up when I'm, at my parents' house. Now our family is grown. It's about 14 of us. Sometimes all of us are on our separate cushions. All of the adults are on a cell, except my mama. Now my mama, she's going to talk. But all other adults, we're on a cell phone. We're on a tablet. Sometimes we have the computer sitting on the table, phone in the hand. The kids have their tablets and their earphones on, but we're literally all in the same room. Or if someone you were talking about speaking, if we're like that and they come in or out of the room, like we might look up to acknowledge them, but it's not, let me put my phone down and engage. And I think that's one of the reasons.
I'm going to ask a question now for those who may not know. Dr. Glenn has been very active in our church district with leading and planning and executing like the youth camps, and it's, you know, outdoors and activities. Have you seen children kind of, or have you seen, or in your opinion, are those interactions different now because children are, you know, when you get them out to youth camp, because I know when I went to youth camp, there was no technology, you know, and when I see the pictures and the videos from youth camps in the past recently, there wasn't a lot of technology use. Do kids feel out of place in that, or can you tell that they're just not comfortable the first couple of days of camp because they don't have the technology?
They might be going through a
they're not comfortable all week of camp. And they're always like, you know, can we have, but it's almost, I remember one year, it was kind of a point the older kids brought up, almost wanting to negotiate, like, can we have screen time? But I just thought it was important to keep those devices away. Like, it was a part written into the not contract, registration that parents had to sign that students wouldn't, or the campers wouldn't bring devices, because it's a skill. It's something they have to learn. And I think when I think back to camp, like you said, when we were younger, it was no devices. Like, everything was, we're outside, we're hiking, we are playing kickball, you know, we're running, like, we're just outside having fun with other people. And so the kids, like, you'll often hear, especially day 1 and day 2, I'm so bored, I want something to do, and that's when we have the opportunity to say, okay, well, this group is jumping rope, you can go play with them, or, you know, you can go play basketball, or why don't you guys, you know, do a puzzle or something like that. So just teaching that, which is another good skill for kids, because another effect of that instant gratification with technology, as soon as kids say, I'm bored, they go on to the next thing. Or think of, again, us as adults and as kids, when I'm bored with Facebook, I go to TikTok. When I get bored of TikTok, I go to Instagram. When I'm bored, so there's always something else. But teaching kids how to, like, combat boredom in other ways was an important part of youth camp. But yeah, they, not just the first few days, they were uncomfortable all week long.
Dr. Glenn, so I wanted to ask a question about boys and girls, age, and also age groups, like kindergarten, elementary, middle school, high school. What do you see? Is it the boys are more into technology, or the girls, or in what age range does it feel like it's more like addictive prone?
At this point, I don't see a difference. It's the girls, it's the boys, and it's kids. Like, even babies, like, not toddlers, but babies, they know how to get a phone and swipe up. They know that YouTube app. And so I don't think at this point it's an age thing, but, like, they're digital natives. Technology is literally everywhere. You go into the stores. Imagine the difficulties we would have going to Burger King if all the technology were shut down. I went to, I think it was Zaxby's. I couldn't even get the soda I wanted because of the machines that they have. You know, the ones you touch Sprite, then you can say, because the technology was down, I couldn't get the soda I wanted, you know? So technology is just everywhere. So it's girls, it's boys, it's every age. I think how kids use it is different, and kind of what we have to be mindful of is different. One of the big worries, each year as an educator, we have to do a training on suicide. And because of the rise in technology, there's been a significant rise in suicide among teenagers. And what the research is showing us, social media, when kids are getting on there and they're comparing themselves to other people, cyberbullying is a huge issue. And so it impacts their self-confidence, and it's creating an issue. With the younger kids, we're starting to see that age come down some more, which is very scary. But which is why those social media sites say kids need to be, I think the age is 13 before they can get on. But even the younger kids with the cyberbullying, with the just comparison, like, oh, I wish I had this or I wish I could do that kind of thing, is creating almost an addiction to create a new identity. Because online, some people feel like I can be who I want to be. I can put this filter on. I can put this backdrop on. I can change my voice. I can literally create a new persona for my online person. So, and at this point, it's not so much restricted to a certain age or gender.
And let me ask,
it's like an identity crisis.
Yeah, and let me ask this question. Us being a community of faith, a lot of times, we'll just pray about things, or we tend to, with kids, we think kids will just be kids. But with you talking about the increase in suicide rates among teenagers, that age moving down, the mental impacts that some of these cyberbullying and kind of identity impacts that you're having because of comparison, or how do we notice these things in children? And then how do we, whether it's parents or as a community of faith, what would be your thoughts on approaching and trying to help children that are being impacted by those kinds of things?
Great, good one.
I think one thing, it goes back to limiting their time, and even explaining to children why you're limiting the time. Just telling them, we're not going to, or have those times of the day where it's no device time. That may be first thing in the morning. Like, we don't get on a device first thing in the morning, or we don't get on a device before we have said our prayers and we have eaten breakfast. We aren't on devices during any meals. That's our time to sit, to have conversations with each other. Even if it's a snack, like, put the phone down, enjoy your snack. Enjoy. If you're outside playing basketball, leave the phone inside. So one way is limiting the time. I think in order to notice it, you just kind of pay attention to behaviors that change. If you notice a child who typically just loves sports, all of a sudden they no longer have an interest. Or if you notice eating habits have changed, and you notice, they used to really love pizza and hamburgers, now they don't want to eat anything. They used to really be interested in singing in the church choir. Now they're not really interested anymore. So paying attention to those kind of behavior changes, and really, I think a good start, just engage them in conversation to say, hey, I noticed you used to really love singing in the choir, but you don't seem really interested. Let's talk. What's changing? How's it going? And sometimes it may just be they genuinely aren't interested in the choir. But sometimes it could be an underlying issue. So I think just having conversation with children would help.
That's something we do at home too. When it's dinner time, we get rid of the devices. They want to watch a little show, we let them watch a show. But after school, there's no devices because they've had it all day in school. And when we're home, we want to have one-on-one person communication. So what I was thinking is, at what age do you think, from your experience, can a parent start or allowing their kids to interact with technology type stuff? Because you said babies can just stroll, and all of us want to make geniuses, and we think technology can do that. So what age do you think that it's appropriate to allow them to start using it?
So that's a tough question. I think, like most things, it depends on individual children. There has been more and more research put out that say children under 2 shouldn't use a device. I think because of the world we're in, that would be kind of difficult. But I think it really depends on the child, because I know you all having 4 children. I'm sure you've noticed, like, your oldest may have been ready for something, and the second one got to that same age, but he wasn't quite ready. Or it may have been the opposite. You had the oldest, and you're like, okay, we're not ready to have this conversation or engage in this. But the younger one, even at an earlier age, you may say, well, yeah, now let's introduce this, or let's have that conversation. So I think it's the same with technology. Just know your children and just kind of know what they're ready for.
I hear you.
I'm laughing.
That's another show. We're not talking about that.
Oh my God.
We're not talking about that.
It was a conversation that was very, we didn't think they were ready, but they were ready.
Yeah, this was the younger one. They
always tell you. Kids will always tell you when they're ready. Not technology related, but one thing that I learned from a pre-K teacher, like you don't have to be so quick to help kids with something. They'll tell you when they need help, and that's a part of development. So same with technology. Kids will let you know when they're ready, and their behaviors will also let you know when it's time to pull back.
Oh, and now I want to go there. We're going to kind of step away from the technology and tap into the educator, that you're just talking about in parenting, and definitely in the spiritual space, in our churches, in our youth ministries. Mm-hmm. I know growing up, it was a lot of, I tell you what you need to be doing right now.
Yes.
And sometimes I feel that can be kind of, especially in this generation, where a lot of where technology's kind of changed how kids approach things, and that we're wanting to encourage independence. How could we go about in our parenting, or from your point as an educator, or in the spiritual space, really helping children feel supported, and I'm interested in that, or I need help in this, without feeling that they're being forced into something?
That's a good question. I think exposure is important. Just exposing kids to a variety of things, like with community rec leagues, you have soccer, basketball, football, whatever else may be out there, lacrosse. Give them a chance to play all of them. And then once they show a particular interest in one, then maybe make that, I'll even say the investment, because I know those things cost, but give them exposure, take them to the different museums, let them, take them to the basketball game, but also take them to the Broadway musical, take them to, just let them see different things, take them to different cities, let them see the skyscrapers, but also let them see the farms, just so they can see a variety of things, because we never really know if we're interested if we're never exposed.
Very true. Very true. I think that's so important. And I think a lot of times, and this is just my personal soapbox, I think there's so many talents and gifts in our youth population that because we are telling them to do things or pushing them into things that we think are important, we don't expose them to things and allow them to, what they say, self-select what they're interested in because it fits them, and then trying to guide them and lead them in that thing they're interested in, and not just kind of force them into something. I think that's very important.
Because when you do that, most kids just go into a box shell and they say, I'm done.
They retreat to the digital space because they can control that.
Yeah.
So now,
same conversation, if I can add, one important lesson to teach, though, is commitment. Like letting kids know, even if you're not interested in something. Like I did piano lessons just last from like August to December, and there came a point where I was still in school, and I was like, okay, I'm tired of this. I'm ready to quit. But I was raised, if you start something, you finish it. So I finished it out, and I think the same thing with exposure. And I think it's important to have that conversation, because a part of your question was, how do you, give them those opportunities without making them feel forced? At a point, they'll feel like, well, you're making me do this and I don't want to do it. When the lesson really is, we started this, let's finish it, but you don't have to go back to it if it's not within your interest.
Good. That's really good.
So what about us as parents? We sometimes need to learn how to back away too. And we need to learn how to manage their devices. Is there a way, like parental restrictions or control type apps and stuff like that can help us restrict it? Like we have a 5-year-old. We don't want him to see stuff that 10-year-olds see. Is there something out there that can help devices that they have make that happen?
There are some things out there. I can't, unfortunately, give specific names, only because a lot of it depends on the device you have. Sometimes the company through which you have your internet, but there are restrictions. And even with, like, if you have iPads, in schools, we do something or put them in a mode called guided browsing, where they can only go to specific sites. And I remember they've had those things even on TVs when we were growing up. We have restrictions on our TV, and I mean hard restrict. My parents put the restrictions on so high, they blocked the word God on our TV. Like the restrictions were that high. So, they didn't do that, of course, on person, but they wanted to make sure we weren't exposed to anything that they didn't want us to repeat. But yeah, I would say a good place to start. Google is always great. Like, Google, what are some, I think they're usually called parental control apps or parental control features for your specific device.
Wow, that's really good. Now I'm going to shift gears a little bit, and I'm going to shift from Dr. Glenn and the educator space, which we certainly her to contribute to
the CEO
of the household, Miss Shawnee. Being the engineer of the house that put all the parts and pieces together. When it comes to supporting or building an environment that kids can flourish in or thrive in, what is your approach to making sure that all of their little individual needs are attended to, and how do you begin that process of trying to build an environment in the home that's mentally safe and supportive for children?
I would say, if it's a mom or a dad, take a moment to recognize who you are and what your limitations are. Because some people do not like schedules. Some people like the Montessori way, where it's just like whatever pops up, we do. But I've seen, because I've worked in the governmental space, I've always had a structure. So the way I work is I go into my Google Maps and I said, the way that I'm going to do this is 9 o'clock, we're going to do this. 10 o'clock, we're going to do this. 11 o'clock, we're going to do this. This is like literally my phone goes off and it says, do this, do this, do this, do this. 5 o'clock, this dinner. And I've been doing it so long that the kids recognize, as soon as the bell rings, they know what to do in all those different times. So it's more of consistency, and you have to discipline yourself, because it's a lot of work for you as a parent, because you can't give up. Because if they see you give up, they're like, oh, mom and dad can't do it, so I'm good. Right. And for the setting mental and emotional boundaries and spaces for the kids, each kid is different. And sometimes it's me alone in the beginning of the day, and the 4 kids, each of them sometimes want me at a separate time. So I had to teach them that, okay, at this time, if I'm working with this student, you sit down and do this. If I'm working with this other little boy, I'm talking to kids, like I'm in school. But they had to learn that each one of them had to have their time and their individual time. Because, there are times where kids feel like, mama don't spend that much time with me. She spend more time with this kid. This is my brother or my sister. But you have to establish in them, there's 4 of you and there's this many hours in a day, and there's only one of me. And I have to take time with you. And when it's your turn, you get all my undivided attention. So that's how they end up growing to be independent, learning who they are, and not afraid to be who they are. That's what I've experienced in my home.
Okay.
In our home.
Yeah, I'm about to say, I live here too.
Yes,
I live here
our
too.
home.
But Dr. Glenn, what do you think about routines, schedules, and the benefit of structure for children, in school, in the home, even in the church or the community? Is that something that you really think is very important for children?
It's so necessary. And as you were speaking, I wrote down a few things: consistency, discipline. Kids crave those things.
Yes.
When we see this,
time out. So kids crave discipline and consistency?
They crave that. And the other 2 things you said as to why they crave it, because it creates a safe space and it creates boundaries for them to know, as long as I'm here, mom and daddy, they're going to take care of me. Or as long as I'm here, mom, my teacher won't let anything happen. Like, if I stay within these bumpers, nothing's going to happen to me. I was just having this conversation with one of the other instructional coaches, And we had a situation where the teacher was out, emergency surgery, and the kids, just for a few days, they were like, every few minutes they were calling, we need an administrator, we need this, we need that. And what we find the issue is, the substitute was in the class, but just sitting there. So the kids didn't have someone saying, okay, this is what we're doing in math. Let's do this, 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 this. All right, let's transition. Let's go here. This, 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 this. And so essentially those children were being left to create their own routine. They were being left to create their own order. And it's unfair for us to ask, those children are 8, 9? It's unfair for us to ask an 8 or a 9-year-old to take on that responsibility. And so I started going into that classroom, and I gave them a routine. Every morning at 7:10, I'm coming in, and this is what we're going to do. This is how we do breakfast. This is how we go to the restroom. At 8:15, this is what we do. At 9:35, you log on to this device, do this activity, and then this is happening. At 10, this is what we do. Gave them a schedule, and things started to change immediately. Children crave that consistency because it creates safety. Think about even us as adults. Like, if you went into work and your desk was in a new spot every day, or you had to go to a new person to get something that's chaotic.
Yes, it is.
That's you having to think of all the decisions we have to make in a day. Consistency helps us to make some of those things automatic. If somebody moved your toothbrush, your toothpaste, literally every day, if somebody was in your park at work, I shouldn't have said that. I crossed the line.
It's not even us. It's not even us. It's the children. I don't know. I come in and the toothpaste is never where I put it, and it drives me crazy in the morning.
Because it takes away the consistency. It takes away just being able to pick it up and go on with your day. So kids crave it, and we can see a difference in schools when children, in households where children may stay with mom during the week or stay with dad during the week and stay with the other parent on the weekend, or when kids kind of alternate weekends, or they may have gone on vacation. We can always tell a difference when they come back. And as teachers, you get to know your families, and we can usually pinpoint to say where that child likely stayed the night before because of the behaviors they're displaying in school. So that consistency and that discipline is huge, and it does carry over to school.
Wow. And I often think of kids, and of course I know about structure and why that's important, but I know it's easy for adults and parents to want to make the child happy by just kind of letting them be. And there's also a push to let a child be an individual. So how do we balance the routine, the consistency with also that personal or that individual development? How do you find a balance?
I could tell you in the home, because you're at work most of the day and you come home and you say, babe, what we're going to do today. But with the boys, each of them have their own way of eating cereal. Each of them have their own way of opening a bag of chips. So when it's like, all right, it's time to eat dinner, you go get your dinner plate, you sit in this spot, and you do it this way, you do it that way. So they're doing what you asked them to do, but you're not making them do it the way you want them to do it. They do it in a way that's relaxing and comfortable for them. So
they're consistent. The routine is consistent and supportive, but they're being an individual within the routine?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right. So, Dr. Glenn, is that something you think that is kind of true, that even with the routine and the consistency, can you see that personal development and growth and not kind of restrict them with all of the guidelines that you have?
Absolutely. When Shawnee was speaking earlier, one of the things she said, when she's working with the four boys, when I'm working with one, the other 3 have to be alone. That too is very important for children to know how to be when I'm alone. To know what do I do? That's when kids find out what they like. When I'm alone, do I like to read a book? That's me, even as an adult. If I have downtime, one of the first things I'm going to do is pick up a book. One of my sisters and brothers, some of them, the first thing they're going to do is turn the TV on. Some of them, the first thing they're going to do, go outside. But being alone helps with that. Something else that she just said that's so important. They all do their cereal differently. They like their dinner differently. As adults, and I think you said it, Dr. Presley, earlier about control. As adults, we want to be in control all the time.
Right,
but
right.
what we learn as educators, it's okay not to be in control. It's okay to facilitate. It's okay to say, okay, now we're having cereal for breakfast. The milk is here, the bowls are here, the cereal is here. It's okay if one wants to pour their milk first and then the cereal, but the other one says, no, I have to pour my cereal first and then the milk. And as adults, sometimes we'll give a task, and even in school, it's a huge lesson that teachers have to learn, because not only do we want kids to do things our way, we also want them to do it in our time. Like, how many times have you heard an older adult, you're not finished yet? Like, you should have been done, or I told you.
Right.
If there wasn't a deadline, if the important thing is the task being done, it's important for us as adults, know that it's okay to release control. If you're telling a kid, clean your room, and taking it back to the whole technology aspect, it may be you'll get your device after you finish cleaning your room. You might have one kid who says, okay, I'm going to go clean now because I want the device. You might have a kid like me. I don't care about the device. I have my book, so I'm not going to clean it until tomorrow. That's okay, That's okay, because at the end of it, the room will still be clean,
Okay, that's so good. That is so good.
Yeah.
And I think we're talking about technology, talking about individual or growth and development with children in today's world where there's so many things held in tension. Being able to see kids develop and grow in a healthy way is so important, because I think I know it's really hard to grow into a strong, mature, healthy adult if you don't develop strong and healthy through those developmental and formative years. So this is good. Oh, I'm getting all caught up. Y'all are blessing me right now. Y'all are blessing my soul. All right. So another question for you. When it comes to building an environment, now we've talked about kind of consistency and routine. How do you support academic academic pursuits in the home, for children? Because over the last couple of years, there was virtual learning, there was hybrid learning, there was back and forth. So how have you found the best way to support them or build an environment where whatever they're pursuing outside of the house is supported inside the home, and to make sure that they're developing well?
What I've done, I literally mimic the classroom.
Wow.
I have desks like the classroom have, and I had 4 of them.
Yes, we did.
And I have the wall, kind of the banner and everything, just like the classroom. So when they walk in, it's like, oh, this is a serious space. And when it's, how the teacher is having an assessment with a child, they take one and say, let's go into the room. I have a space where I take one and go into the room. And all over my house, there's a number chart, a word list, letters. There's something. So whenever they walk around, something that triggers, okay, oh, that's because, oh, that's 100, oh, that's C. So in our home, the living room, our den, literally mimics the classroom. Everybody can't do that, but you have to figure out in your own space, where can they have that space where it's almost like a classroom space, a space that's just designated for what they're going to see in the classroom.
Okay. And Dr. Glenn, what do you think? What do you think about kind of what we can do to support kids' academic pursuits, extracurricular pursuits, and building an environment outside of the classroom or the dedicated educational space that can be done to kind of support them and help them feel ready to attack the world, I guess is a good way to put it.
Yeah, I think I agree with what was said about having those spaces. And even if it's not with the posters or with the physical desk, but just having a dedicated space so that there can be a connection between when I sit at this table in this chair, this is my focus. I was just reading the book Atomic Habits. This isn't an ad for it or anything, but I was just reading that book, and one of the things the author talked about was having those environments. He was like, sometimes you want to change a behavior, but you find that you keep going back to the old behavior. It's not because you don't have the motivation to do it. It's just a breakdown in your system that could be related to your environment. And, you have to make things easy. Like going back to me and the piano, one of the reasons I don't practice my keyboard often is because every time I want to do it, I have to put the stand up, put the keyboard in it, plug it in, then play. Then I have to tear it down. When I'm at my parents' house, we have a piano and there's also a keyboard already up in my room. And most often when I go home, I play the keyboard because it's already there. So with kids, having that dedicated space, it's almost like a brain thing, just like the research that says you should only sleep when you go to your bed, because if you are on your device when you're in bed, or if you're like me and you're always reading when you're in bed, your brain doesn't say when you lay down, it's time to sleep. Instead, your brain says, oh, maybe it's time to read, or maybe it's time to scroll TikTok for an hour, or, but having that dedicated space just helps to make a brain connection between the space and what you should be doing.
Great. Yes. All right. So I think we're going to wrap up on this last question. And now that we've got the routines and the consistency, we've got the support for their academic pursuits.
Yes.
How do we not put too much pressure on a kid or a child, or to, a preteen, a teen, to achieve what we see as what they should be doing? Like, how do we motivate them and support them, but not put too much pressure on them? What do you think about that? Either one of you.
I have high standards for myself, and sometimes it spill over to where I want to put that on my children. And when I think something may be easy for me, it's not actually easy for them. And I've had to learn as a mom to talk to my son, and he tells me, Mom, yeah, I might get a B or an A on it, but it wasn't easy. And I don't see the work that he's putting in. So for me, I had to learn, slow down, and allow him to move at his own pace. And when I see that he needs assistance, ask and then step in. Because we had a conversation, remember earlier, like 2 weeks ago, and he was like, Mom, you be on me all the time. I said, but when I'm on you, you get the grades you want. But when I'm not on you, you slack back. I say, I watch patterns. I'm a person that because I have a criminal justice degree, I watch everything. So I watch the patterns. And I told him, I said, when it's the 9-week starts, you start low. And then you get a wave high up. And then when the 9 weeks is in, then you go back down again. And I told him, I said, so when you're going back into the new 9 weeks, you have to wave back up. I said, and I've noticed that pattern. And he said, Mom, I like when you push me, but you have to push me at the right time. And he told me when that time is. And then he says, around this time, back off. So you have to talk to the person, to your child, to the student, to figure out what's going on in their mind.
Dr. Glenn, what do you think about grades and achievements and how we should support but not overwhelm a child with those things?
Yeah, again, I'll support what you said. And you said you have to talk, but more importantly, you have to listen. As adults, sometimes we think we know, like we have the answer. Our way is the right way. It worked for me, so it'll work for you. Not always necessarily true. And it goes back to kids being individuals. So listening to your children. And I love what you said about seeing those patterns, like see the pattern. We have some children, they will always do better in school when they're also involved in some kind of extracurricular activity. But then you have other students, they will bomb in school when they have extracurricular extracurricular activity because it's too much. And so really just being, see what's happening, see those patterns, and ask your child. Like children are very intelligent. They're just little humans, but humans nonetheless. And so that means they have feelings, they have emotions. They know what they need, and although they can't always articulate it, if we have a conversation with them to say, hey, I notice you are having some trouble with math. How do you want me to help you? And they may say, well, can you help me with these flashcards? Or will you explain this homework to me? Or even if they can't say it that way, if you can get them to tell you the specific problem, then as the adult, you just try out some different things. It may be, my child loves technology. They're struggling with multiplication. I'm going to find an app. My child likes technology, but I notice they're easily distracted. So the child who's easily distracted by the technology, you're going to get flashcards. So just kind of pay attention to your child's individual needs, to their interests, and like was stated, just listen to them, talk to them, listen to them, and try it out. Let them tell you how they need your help.
Wow, that's so good. This has been a great time. I can't.
Enjoyed this.
This has been awesome, Dr. Glenn, the Professor, CEO, mother of the house.
Thank you.
Presley. Time for our daily health. Time for our. That is a full-time job. You are exactly right.
Mm-hmm.
I do want to say this, our daily health tip for the month. We always do one of these, and it's going to be technology related. I was listening to a podcast, and it was talking about technology. This one was more geared toward adults, but I think it applies across. He was talking about how we always blame technology for our inattention, for our lack of focus. Mm-hmm. He's like, but if you really pay attention, the technology companies, the Twitter, TikToks, Facebook, these companies have also become aware of that. Snapchat, I forgot Instagram, I forgot that one, Reddit, Twitch, all these things. But now the cell phone makers and even some of the social media platforms, they build in controls. Mm-hmm. Like the first time I was a late comer to TikTok. I got on TikTok, and the first time I was scrolling, and a little person came on the screen and was like, you've been scrolling for quite. I was like, what is this? I really thought it was like a funny video. I really thought it was a funny video. But they used the approach of you hack back the technology. They said a lot of the companies now, they build in tools and digital well-being technologies to help you build those kind of boundaries for yourself, for your children. So my daily health tip for the month is for adults, for children, whatever is already there for us to control and build routines around technology, use them. On my phone, I have, and it's not even a newer phone. It's a S20 Plus. It's 3 or 4 years old now. It has digital well-being. So I can set app timers. My TikTok time is set to 30 minutes. All of my social medias are set to like 20 to 30 minutes a piece. And it'll tell me, all right, that app's deactivated for the day. You're done. Mm-hmm. And I found from the time I started that, it's much less likely that I'm going to spend an hour on TikTok. Because if it says that, I have to come out of the app, go into the setting, change the app timer. By that time, I've lost interest in it. Now it's not worth that. Yeah. So my daily health tip, with all of the tools that are built into phones, built into social media platforms now, hack back the technology. Take your time back, get your time back, and be social with real people that are you around. Yeah. All right. So anything you want to add, you or Dr. Glenn?
Yes.
I was saying, what you said was good. I did the same thing, and I've also set it up where each Sunday I get a report that tells me how long I've been on each of my apps. So during the school, I'll say Sunday through Friday, there's a different time. Saturday, it's all open. Summertime, it's all open. But I started doing that because I noticed I was in my phone, and I think I came across it by accident, but it was like you spent 6 hours on TikTok, 7 hours on Facebook, and I'm like, I don't even have this much time. Like, when was I on? Like, you really can get lost in the time with technology. So I love that hack of hacking back the technology. Thank you for sharing that. And thank you all for having me. I really enjoyed this conversation. This was great.
Thank you so much again for joining us.
Yes.
And to our audience out there, thank you for joining us. Remember, send comments, questions. Make sure you like, subscribe to the channel, put the notification bell on. And if there are comments and questions, put them in there and maybe we can address them in a future show.
Yes.
But as always, thank you so much for joining us on Healthy and Whole.
Mind, body, and soul.
All right, y'all take care. We'll see you next month.
Bye.
Bye-bye.